This should go on the board. There we go. Thank you so much. I have no idea. What's right? It's just as well.
Send the link.
Oh, Yeah, I know that. Right, I exactly this is the second time I feel that. Yeah, I know having been there for the whole exercise back in '06, it was intentional. Having been involved in the protection path back in the day, the view was, at least from the city, these people are well compensated, so. I'm sorry you're, well paid. But obviously,
Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 testing.
It's just. You don't even catch up, it's just.
That's how I know we have to have
Here I am. Nothing. Nothing. Well, no, that was. Yeah, I'm gonna try to.
That was a no.
Yes. Really? You're all like laughing at me twice.
Sarah, one more time.
Oh, testing, testing.
Oh, you've been talking the whole time. Good. Lisa says she hears it. Okay. We're positive.
Testing, testing.
I didn't know. No questions about so they know. And this is the process taken when they first read. Let's do it now. So basically, joint O, iron on,
Good morning. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Deferred Compensation. Nothing, I am, no, they didn't check YouTube. Okay, good. One second, please. Yes, hey. Yeah. Mhm. Which one did you try? Claudia's saying now she hears it on YouTube. Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay.
So I'm assuming. I would keep this one as the microphone and on top.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we're set to go now. Our apologies.
No worries.
Okay, we're ready to go. Thank you. No? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Are we good? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your patience. Good morning. Today is March 17th, and this is a regular meeting of the Board of Deferred Compensation Administration. We have members Bauda, Salazar, Benham, Wright, Billups, Bowie, and Lurvy. We do have a quorum present. My name is Esther Chang, and I'm the Deferred Compensation Plan Manager, and we also have present legal counsel Charles Hong.
Thank you, Esther. With that, I'll call the meeting to order at 9:13. First order of business is public comments.
Any person wishing to make a public comment, press star 9 to request to speak and press star 6 to unmute and speak when prompted. Okay. Lilith, do we have anyone on the line?
Neil's not there today.
They did press? Okay. Okay. No public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move to agenda item number 3. We have 2 sets of minutes, the first from February 17th, 2026, and also the January 2026 meeting. That was back on the agenda due to a glitch on the last agenda. So we have 2 sets of minutes to approve this morning. Any questions or comments on those?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments before we move to a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of adoption, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to agenda item number 4, Board Report 2615, Investment Consulting Services RFP.
Good morning. Today we'll have Stephen Montano who will be presenting on this item.
Good morning. So in this report, we are recommending approval of a draft RFP for investment consulting services. The contract with the incumbent expires at the end of this year. So launching the RFP now gives us time to run the process, choose a vendor, and to get the contract in place by year end. Under the administrative code, this board has the authority to enter into contract terms of up to 5 years. And so that's the contract term length that we have provided for in the RFP. You might recall that we kind of revamped and updated our RFP model for the administrative consulting services RFP last year. So we've used that model for this RFP. There are 4 categories of investment consulting services that are included here. Investment design consulting, which is really about your investment menu and investment policy. Consulting for investment manager searches and investment performance monitoring. Compliance and risk management consulting, which is a little new to include, but it does sort of work well with a lot of this risk management initiative that we've been undergoing. So we want to look into what their capabilities are there. And then the last is consulting on areas looking at plan level and participant outcomes, and consulting on any sorts of other kinds of issues or any kinds of emerging issues that might be of interest to the board. So we're planning to release the RFP next month with responses due in about 6 weeks, and a selection made sometime in the third quarter of this year. The board will have the option, but not the obligation, to conduct interviews with the firms. There's that. The process is going to involve, in addition to scoring the written proposals, so that will be done by the Proposal Evaluation Committee. And there's also this what we call an engagement exercise, which we include as part of most of our RFPs, which is an opportunity to be able to interact with the proposers, but that part of the process is not scored. So we have close to 80 questions in the RFP. You'll be happy to know that I'm not going to go through all those with you. But I did want to note that once you get past the organizational qualifications questions, the questions on the actual work that we're looking for, almost all of those have been revamped. So we didn't want to do the cookie cutter. There's a lot that's changed and is changing, and we want to make sure that the questions and what we're asking about is going to be relevant to where things are going, not sort of where things have been. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Any questions or comments for Stephen? If not, I'd be glad to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Second. Let's call for questions or comments. Hearing none, all in favor of adoption, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to agenda item number 5, investment provider onboarding.
Okay, so as you know, we have brought a number of reports to you over the last 9 months on the topic of risk management. We've introduced a concept called enterprise risk management, which is really an analytical tool for program management. And we've launched two review processes, one related to compliance and the other related to investment design. When we brought the investment design risk review process to you in December, one of your questions was whether, if certain issues come up that we think should be brought to the board sooner rather than later, or at the conclusion of the process, that is that what would happen? And we indicated that would be the case. So one of the most impactful areas that we prioritized for the investment design risk review had to do with investment provider onboarding. And so because we thought that the risk management lens on that topic was particularly helpful and brought forward some areas that we think the board should be acting on now or should be looking at now. That's sort of why we have this. We've got this early deliverable out of this ERM process. So I will say that the ERM process for this particular issue was particularly helpful. I think it was the most complex, the most detailed, and from our perspective, I think the most beneficial in terms of what it can produce. What we are recommending here, there's a listing in the report of some practical risk mitigation measures, and then we're also recommending the creation of a special ad hoc committee. But before we sort of get to those, I thought it would be helpful to help to try to frame the issues broadly, and then we can open it up to questions and discussion. So As you know, this board and the plan do operate within this broader context of the city's procurement and contracting policies. And historically, the way that the plan has chosen investment providers has changed. So in the early part of the program, the investment products were actually tied to the third-party administrator. So you want to think from like basically 1983 to 1999, what was really driving the selection process was who's going to be the administrator. And then they would have a group of investment options that would be part of their proposal to offer the services and to administer the program. Our plan did something that a lot of governmental plans, particularly large plans, had begun doing at the time in 1999, where they unbundled the administrative services from the investment management services. And the reason they did that was because basically, if you want to have the administrators compete on what they can do with the administration, both on cost and everything else. And then with the investment managers, that's quite a different thing that you're asking for them. And so you want to create the competition there. That process did not necessarily resolve all of the challenges of looking for investment providers. And what prior boards needed to wrestle with over time was this issue of, well, if we issue an RFP, we're limited to considering only the firms that, first of all, know the process is going on, are willing to go through the process in terms of submitting proposals. And that can result in a very limited pool of actual candidates to consider. And because historically the plan had always included mutual funds, and mutual funds do not require contracts. In fact, there is no option to have a contract with a mutual fund. So the board wanted to sort of get the largest pool of potential candidates to consider. And so if you look at the investment policy statement, what you have is kind of a two-track process. You've got one, you're sort of running these processes at the same time. One is the formal RFP procurement process. The other is this mutual fund search. And that really does, for whatever the particular mandate is, you're really looking at really everything that potentially could be offered and that meets the criteria that have been set for that particular mandate. So when we did this the last time, which is sort of 2020 heading into 2021, we ran this process, and I think what happened was we didn't really anticipate at the time what the potential process and resource risks could be to all of this. And sort of, looking back, you might say from a plan level, it was kind of a perfect storm of different challenges. So first of all, the outcome of that process was virtually all of those chosen funds were institutional products requiring contracts. And I can say, since I was here at the time, I did not anticipate that would be the outcome. I had thought it would be more of a mix. The other thing was that there were also significant changes in program leadership that began unfolding at the time of the vendor selections. And that took actually a couple of years to basically resolve what the leadership would be. Mm-hmm. Then, as you well know, and you've had lots of conversations, there was a big dislocation of resources that had to be directed to the payroll conversion project. We also noted in the report that there was a loss of basically all but one of the staff that were in place at the time that I was with the program. All of that changed, and so you had that as well. And then you're sort of trying to deal with a really large number of investment contracts. So that's kind of where we sort of wound up with the situation that we're in now. One perspective on that is, well, that was an unusual set of circumstances. We hope that doesn't happen again. right? But this risk management approach really asks us to do something quite different. And it's asking us to look at these challenges holistically, look at all of the contributing factors, and not simply hope that more resources or better circumstances will necessarily be the things that will take away the risks. And so there are in the report, we've grouped the core challenges into three categories. So the first is conflicting contractual interests. And so basically this just means both the city and the contractors have legitimate interests in how contracts manage risks, the policies that they want to have the counterparty agree to, and then being consistent in how they treat their counterparties. So resolving that, right, those are reasonable sort of expectations going in, is inherently complicated. And so, you know, there isn't a way, there isn't really a way around the complexity of that. So that's one factor. The other, the resource challenges, which we've already mentioned, you know, those resource challenges will always exist. I think the other conclusion that we came out of our analytical process is that contract execution is less a technical process, you know, sort of like, here's the boilerplate and fill in the blanks, than it is a process which requires certain skills, experience, and negotiating authority to be able to deal with the vendor and come up with solutions, right? To be able to work through these differences that are very common. So that's sort of the resource challenge piece of this. And then the last and very important is the policy contingencies. So the question of, if we run into a problem, then what, right? That's where policy can help. So for all of these issues, there are potential policy responses. And, you know, we've outlined them at a high level in section D of the report. They do represent a range of possible solutions that have been explored and discussed, but they haven't been finalized. We're not prepared to say we recommend that you do this now. They do require more discussion. There might be other ideas that come up as a result of those discussions. You know, without going through all of them, I'm happy to do that if you want to discuss any of them, but without going through all of them, there really are options or resources to avoid or to overcome certain choke points that can arise in the process. So the way we think it would be best to proceed is to refer this to an ad hoc committee, as I mentioned before. We did not recommend referring this to the investments committee. And the reason for that is because procurement and contracting issues, yes, we've got this issue with these investment contracts now. However, really these principles could apply to any contract executed by the plan. So we want to be thinking a little more broadly, or have the option to come back with any policy changes that would affect contracting more broadly. So one more item that we wanted to address in this report has to do with the matter of the unresolved contracts from the last search cycle. So as we noted in the report, we have not been able to complete the contracts for any of those to date. Given that the investment policy statement does provide for new searches occurring within a cycle of approximately 5 years, and we're pretty much there, we're almost there, we think it would be counterproductive at this point to direct resources to contract execution. We think the better use of resources is to cancel the prior selections, to use those resources to make the policy changes necessary to help us reduce risks of having the same experiences reoccur in the next search cycle. That would be the better path forward, the wiser path forward. So the last thing I'm going to say, and I'll then happy to open up for questions or comments, is I I think we are optimistic that this process, this risk management review process, and applying it to this particular situation and applying it to good policy and good governance we feel it's very promising, and hoping it can actually resolve some issues that actually predate, I think, the issues that we had with this particular search process. With that, happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you for the report, Stephen, and the history is helpful. That was very thoughtful overall, and also the policy options I thought also were very thoughtful. One question, given your long experience with NAGDA, I know you did a lot of research in this report, but is this a topic that came up with NAGDA over your years there on trying, different entities having problems contracting with investment folks? I know every jurisdiction's different. I know the city is quirky and in some cases has its own foreign policy, but is this a topic that was bantered about at NAGDA?
I would say it was not a huge topic. I think, from time to time you would hear from certain plan sponsors that might have issues along these lines. I think part of it is because there's such variation in the way different governments administer their processes, and then also who's got the authority within the plan, right? I think the city, without having worked at other agencies, I would say that some of the complexities you see in the city of LA are come across as kind of unique, sort of just like the way that we've kind of created the processes and where the authority has kind of been allocated within the organization.
Other questions or comments?
One question real quick. Aside from staff and the board's time, I mean, what was expended, if anything, for this 2021 search?
Well,
I mean,
there-
what are we losing by just saying, hey, we're gonna cancel this whole process and start over?
right. Well, there were certainly consulting costs that were part of the original process.
Can you briefly talk about the choice for the ad hoc committee? I see the explanation as opposed to the investment committee, but we also have our governance and administrative issues committee. Did you consider, like, why do we need an ad hoc committee instead of sending it there?
Right. I think that was designed to really sort of, pull from the board members across these different topic areas, right? It didn't seem like it fit neatly into either one, but it did seem very impactful, and could affect more than one area of administering the plan. So from that perspective, we just thought this might be the better fit.
And I assume the ad hoc format also allows for very frank conversations.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd be glad to entertain a motion.
I'll move this staff recommendation.
Just clarifying, does that apply to all three of their recommendations?
All three, A through C.
A second that. Thank you. Last call for comments or questions. Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you. And we will move on to agenda item number 6, the Avoya Plan Administrator Quarterly Review for the quarter ending December 31st, 2025.
Good morning, everybody. Drew Russell, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Voya Financial. I'm going to kick things off with Latanya here by discussing some of the communications campaigns that we executed in the fourth quarter. So if we move to slide number 7, we're going to start things off with National Retirement Security Month. So I think everyone is familiar with this effort. So this year was pretty successful, and I know that Sarah covered in summary, some of the results that we saw as a result of this campaign. I think one of the biggest wins that we had, aside from doing something new and approaching participants in a fresh way this year, was the collaboration that we had with Latanya's team. We did a number of things. I think one big difference this year was the tabling sessions that we did at all the employee benefits fairs, which resulted in a lot of traffic to the counselors that were manning the tables there. We also produced a number of different videos featuring the retirement counselors that touched on a number of different topics, including topics that are relevant to retirees. So I think that was a couple bright spots. I think coming away from this campaign this year, we did learn some things about some areas that we didn't see the engagement year over year that we had seen, the growth that is, and engagement year over year that we've seen in the past. So I think the task force in this upcoming year, as we start to develop the strategy for National Retirement Security Month 2026, is to really take a deep dive into what's working well, what worked well in 2025, and what we need to change in 2026. I know that during the month of October, we're competing with a number of different other campaigns going on within the city, especially related to employee benefits and enrollment in those. So I think what we did learn again is that sort of piggybacking on some of those other initiatives that are happening at the same time did us some good. So I think it'd behoove us to look at how we can do that in 2026 and hopefully drive engagement even higher. But again, I know Sarah talked at length about this campaign. We're going to be submitting our Your Path, Your Plan campaign for an award at NAGDA this year, and hopefully we can come back to you in September and share some good news about winning another award in National Retirement Security Month. Moving on to the next campaign. So this one should look familiar. This is the Cybersecurity Awareness Assessment. Back in 2024, we launched an interactive assessment to help people gauge their cybersecurity readiness. This one did win an award at the NAGNA conference in 2025, so we wanted to bring it back. And get some more traction out of it, since we did put some effort into building it and it was successful. So we, in 2024, we sent this out to just retirees. So just those that are terminated, and saw a good result, and we wanted to make it available to a wider audience. So we did promote it through an email campaign, as well as a blog post and the newsletter. As a result of those efforts, we did have 289 participants complete the assessment and 782 visits to the blog post. So this kind of wraps up that specific cybersecurity campaign that utilized that assessment. I think what we've learned, as I've shared with you in the past, is that these interactive assessments or quizzes are really helpful in getting that engagement with participants and getting them engaged in the topic at hand. So I think, as we go throughout this year and as we look at National Retirement Security Month campaign, how can we do some more of these assessments that are really delivering some good engagement with participants? Moving on to the next campaign. This was the final touch point for our enrollment journey. If you recall, at the beginning of 2025, we came to you and proposed this idea for communications journeys to different cohorts in the participant base. And this one focused on enrollment. So at the beginning of the year, we identified the cohort, as I call it, of participants who were eligible but not enrolled. And throughout the year, we had 3 different touch points. That was emails and postcards to try to sort of chip away at that group of eligible participants who had not yet enrolled. And this was the final touch point for that one. This specific campaign highlighted the flexibility of saving. So you can save as little as you want, as much as you want, flat dollar or percent of pay. In total, we sent about 1,200 emails and 11,000 postcards, and we did see 262 new participants enroll as a result of this specific communication in the fourth quarter. So that wrapped up the enrollment journey. I think, you know, from my perspective, it was very successful in sort of hitting participants with repetitive communications on the same topic, which sort of got them to take the action that we wanted them to take, which was enroll in the plan. Moving on to the next one, I think I'm on slide 10 now. This is the other journey that we had running simultaneously in 2025. This was what we call the diversification journey, which focused on getting participants who were invested in more than two risk-based portfolio or two or more risk-based portfolios, sort of simplifying that for them and teaching them how the risk-based portfolios operate, how really it behooves them to just be invested in one because they might have a duplication of investment options if they're invested in multiple portfolios. So this was the final touch point for that journey as well. I think I've complimented Latanya in the past, but I do want to thank her publicly. And this was a big task for them to field these inquiries that came as a result of these communications on the risk-based portfolios. People calling her team, asking, you know, what does this mean? What should I do? What do I need to do to get my investment portfolio aligned how it should be? And I know that her team fielded a lot of calls. So I want to thank Latanya and her team for doing that work and helping participants understand how the risk-based portfolios work and getting them invested properly. So as a result of this specific touch point in the fourth quarter, we saw 174 participants reallocate to a single portfolio, which is the behavior that we wanted to see. I don't have the total number for the year written down here, but I know Sarah shared that in the year-end wrap-up at the last board meeting. So again, I think the journey approach was really successful in helping us change the behavior, not only on enrollment, but also on proper investing. And then the final campaign for the year was our end of year checklist. This one should look really familiar. We do these seasonal checklists twice a year, one at the end of the year and then one in the summer. This one touched on all those normal topics, all those normal reminders that we want to make participants aware of, especially with the new limits, the new contribution limits being announced, albeit late in the year. It aligned perfectly so we could get this communication out with the new limits that the IRS released. Also, those important deadlines around contribution changes, as well as Roth conversions. So this one, we sent out about 38,000 emails, 14,000 postcards, and we had about 1,100 views of the blog posts. So again, just kind of one of those need to do every year that we do to keep participants informed. And then finally, our Q4 participant newsletter that went out in January. Our feature article for this one focused on what we called the February Financial Challenge. This was a 4-week challenge for participants where we sort of tasked them with taking a specific action each week to help improve their overall financial well-being. We actually made this into a campaign in February as well, outside of just promoting it in the newsletter. And we also had an article about know who you're working with. And this is sort of the that reminder that we're kind of putting out there to participants all the time about being cautious when being approached with a third-party advisor. You know, understanding the fees that they might be charging, what services you're getting from them, and what to look out for if you are being approached. Because I know this is a topic that city staff has been concerned about, and we want to make sure that participants are protected, especially since this is their nest egg, their largest investment. We also had some DCP news articles, just reminders for the new year, sort of, you know, housekeeping things, contribution limit increases, which we wanted to make them aware of. Obviously, we have the board elections coming up, so we were able to squeeze in a reminder about that, and then a cybersecurity corner article about smartphone app permissions. So again, trying to keep cybersecurity, good cybersecurity practices top of mind. I think that was it for communications for the fourth quarter. It was a really busy quarter. We got a lot done. I'm happy to take any questions from anybody.
Good
Christian,
Yep.
looking at page 9,
Mhm.
which is the non-enrolled participants.
Yes.
So there were a lot more postcards sent than emails. Does that mean that there are a total of 11,609 people in that category, in that cohort, as you said, of people who are not enrolled but could be? And how did you choose how to contact those people? Because, for example, on page 10, the breakdown between emails and postcards is different. It seems like it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, so especially as it relates to eligible but not enrolled participants, we don't have email addresses for them. We have physical addresses, but we just don't have good email addresses. So whenever we're doing a campaign to eligible not enrolled, you're going to see a lot more paper mailing than you see actual emails go out. Yep.
So is that the number? 11,600? 11,609 is
Yeah.
the number of eligible non-enrolled?
From that cohort, so we identified the cohort in January of 2025, and we've sort of followed that group throughout the year. So that wouldn't have been the cohort should we have run the list in December of 2025. That was the cohort in January. So we took this one population, and again, it's not the best term, but chipped away at them, tried to send them multiple communications throughout the year. So yes, in January of 2025, that was the group. Any other questions? Great. Thank you. I'm going to hand things over to Latanya.
Thank you for the kudos. Good morning to everyone. Happy St. Patty's Day. Hope you all wearing your green. I'm going to start on page 14 and go over our activity as Drew mentioned. The tabling sessions that we attended included Caltrans, City Hall, Fig Plaza, LAWA, the zoo, which was new, Marvin Browdy, Personnel, Port of LA, and Public Works. From those tablings, we had 457 people that we saw, ironically, 457 attendees. And we had 2 NRSM presentations that we did. We normally do 2, one on enrollment and one a general topic, just to keep employees engaged with NRSM. And we do an extra one there. So our activities by quarter, in the fourth quarter, we had 2,141 meeting attendees, 1,843 in terms of calls. Our counter service went up a little bit from the third quarter to 255. I contribute that to NRSM because when people come into City Hall and they go for their benefits, they stop in and see us as well because we're right there. We had 190 appointments via Zoom and phone. We had 1,352 emails for a total of 5,781 interactions. We had 51 meetings and 221 enrollments. So as you can see on page 15 is the breakdown for all of our meetings that we attended. Some of them are normal meetings such as LACERS, DWP, LAPD. Nothing, nothing new that came out of the third quarter other than NRSM that kept us pretty busy. So we are planning to go to new locations, starting with General Services and Rec and Park, starting soon for the coming months. Any questions for me?
Yeah, do you
Yes.
do you work on weekends? You don't, right?
Normally, no.
Okay.
My team doesn't, we don't work on weekends. I want to come to the SEIU. We used to come, but we can't do it anymore. Okay, any other questions? Thank you for your attention. Turn it over to Jose.
Good morning, everybody. And I'm wearing my green. So I spent the whole morning debating with my Irish wife and kids whether or not soda bread included eggs or not. So they wouldn't believe me that it does not. But so Jose Morales, Strategic Relationship Manager with Voya. And what I'm going to do is walk through the plan demographics. And we can go to page 17. And I'll just briefly summarize here that really we ended up the year, Q4, in a position of strength. So congratulations to all the hard work throughout the year. In 2025, we added 600 plan participants. Total assets grew by $1.7 billion in 2025. And of that, investment earnings alone was almost 1.5 million. And the payroll contributions for 2025 was 385, almost 388, almost 386 million. So for participants, the average participant balance also increased. So the both in the and the median increased as well. So all good news there. Going to the next page, which is the plan overview. So in terms of participant trends, total participants increased, as I mentioned earlier, from the Q1 to the Q4, from almost 54,000 to 54,633. So again, gaining traction. And as I mentioned earlier, asset growth again grew by $1.7 billion. So really that asset growth is reflective of both the strong market performance and sustained contributions. And if anything, this slide really just demonstrates the the three critical strengths here, so that participation is growing in the plan. Balances are improving across all populations, which we'll see in here in a few minutes. And the savings behavior is disciplined and above benchmarks as well for other similar governmental plans. So it's a good momentum heading into 2026. So plan overview by group, which is the next page. And this slide really breaks out the overall plan into three core participant groups. And what I like about it is that you have fire and police has the strongest outcomes by a wide margin, both in the average and the median balance. Lacers shows a large gap between the average and the median, and really suggests a concentration of higher balance participants with a long tail of those that are lower balance savers. And then water and power sits in between the two. So really what it does is it justifies that there isn't that not all participant experiences are equal. And it really continues to justify a segmented strategy, as we've done a couple of years ago, for those different groups and how they save and how they approach their investment in the retirement. So we'll skip the next page and we'll go to the cash flow summary. Thank you, Lilith. So this slide really illustrates the quarterly plan cash flows, typically broken into contributions and money in and money out. So distributions from the plan, both in withdrawals and rollovers. And really the intent here is not to evaluate, but really to assess the liquidity dynamics of the plan and participant behavior over time, which we'll see in the next slide in just a second. Obviously, here it shows that outflows exceed inflows for the quarter, resulting in a negative cash flow. But I've compared this to other plans, and I compared it to another plan, which I'll share with you in just a second, that it's not abnormal. It's a very mature plan. I compared it to another plan, albeit a little smaller than the city of Los Angeles, but it's not abnormal. And it really just shows the natural cash flow dynamics of a mature plan. This is not on the slide, but I ran some numbers. So if you take the distributions of 92,966,000 over the assets under management, it's 0.76%, so less than 1% of the assets. The other plan I just mentioned is the distributions were 1.7, so it's not as high, right? So I just wanted to give you that perspective. Rollovers, you'll see the rollovers, 78,630,000 and change, 0.64. For this other plan I mentioned, it's 0.68. So about 2/3 of 1%. So again, just to give you some perspective, obviously the plan is getting larger, the numbers are getting larger, but relative to the assets under management, it's right in line with other mature plans. Yes, sir.
If somebody moves their assets from the regular plan into Schwab, does that get classified as a rollover in that number, or is that still in the plan for purposes?
Thank you for the question. It's still in the plan. So that's still part of the plan. Now, if they move the money out from that plan, whether it be Schwab or any other to an IRA, that's a rollover, right? So
Transfer to Schwab, it's treated just like any other investment option within the plan. It is considered a plan transfer. Rollover is actually outside of the plan to another. Yeah, and that's a great question because it kind of leads into the next slide, which is balances by investment. And it is a little bit of a busy slide, but you'll see as Matt, as you saw, the Schwab brokerage still represents 20.9% of the assets. It's still in the plan. It actually has been pretty stable. It had moved up since COVID, but it's been pretty stable, just around 20% of the assets. So that's the largest holding, so to speak, in the DCP. Stable value is 9%. Aggressive portfolio comes in at number 3, 6.69%. Then conservative and the ultra conservative. But it is part of the plan. Some additional insight. Of course, the Schwab is 1/5 of the plan assets, but it really what it does is indicates a high degree of participant self-direction. So, because in the types of investments that they can elect that are not part of the standard core. So, and the other thing it also indicates is I ran some numbers. It's the of the 8,000, 5,000. Sorry. And I had a cold last week, so I might lose my voice. The average of the 8,500 participants, they have the highest balance. The average balance is $297,000, almost $300,000. So the stable value, and I ran some different numbers there. For those that are 100% invested in the stable value alone, the average age is just over age 67, and the median being over 68. So it's being used properly. Excuse me. Any questions? So we'll move to investment diversification before I lose my voice completely. I'm sorry.
So just one more quick question about the accounting. So when someone takes a loan against that, I see that that's not part of rollovers. Are those assets considered still in the plan via some kind of, asset that is going to be repaid? It's going to be repaid, or do they, are those considered reductions in the plan size?
Those are considered reductions. Yeah. And as they pay it back, then it goes back into the plan again, unless there's a default, right? So then it would come out of the plan.
Yeah, just to know, we do keep track of that separately as well. So not in the Voya quarterly, but for the Mercer quarterlies that we do, there is that tracked amount. So we do know how much is owed to be paid back to those participant accounts.
So Lily, if we can go to the slide, it says diversification, all asset options, all investment options. Sorry, thank you. And as Drew mentioned earlier, this slide really represents the education that LaTanya and her team provide. The air cover that Drew provides, I want to say Drew and his team, but Drew single-handedly does. So the air cover that Drew provides, the ground covers that LaTanya and her team provides, in making sure that plan participants really understand that each DCP fund is a strategy unto itself. I took the liberty, I took of doing a comparison, looking at going back a couple years, 2023, end of year 2023, and there has been a movement towards simpler lineup, moving towards 1 to 3 investments. So the biggest increase in one was in the single investment. So over 1,200 participants from 2023 to 2025 choosing the single investment. So it's, again, these journeys are paying off. And the ultra aggressive portfolio had the most single use. So 3,388. And then again, comparing that with the end of year 2023, that was also the single largest movement towards a single use. So we can go to participant outcomes, which is page 27. And I just want to point to the bottom number there, partial, it really separates out full installment and partial distributions in this slide. And partial withdrawals have increased over time. And you can see from that green line, it just follows a cycle, right? So and while it has been going up over the years, again, going back to, and this time I went back to 2022, if you look at the 2025 numbers, partial withdrawals were just a little bit more than 0.5%, 0.054 of the total assets. In 2022, it was 0.054. So exactly the same in terms of percentage of assets. So overall, you see the number going up over time, but as a percentage of the assets, it stayed the same, these partial withdrawals. And I did that, just basically out of curiosity, but I'm sure that you probably have the same questions over time, is how does this plan, and how do plan participants respond to the plan over time? How are they using the services that are available? And on the next page, you'll see that similarly, in-service withdrawals at 59.5. It's the largest figure in terms of dollar amounts. And again, going back to 2022, if you look at 2025 and you add up the numbers, it was a little over $20 million in service withdrawals. It was nearing 0.2%. In 2022, it was just not even, it was a little over 0.1%. So we're really talking about less than 0.2%. So again, in-service withdrawals really have not moved significantly as a percentage of assets. So, and we'll go to participant outcomes, which is actually page 29 and rollovers. Again, you'll see, the numbers going up over time, but, I just wanted to just summarize again for 2025, the 3 original strengths, simultaneously: participation growing, improvement of balances across the population. I think we saw that for all groups, both in the overall average and the median, and again, discipline savings above benchmarks. So, and discipline investment behavior as well. Those looking at the investments and selecting them properly as they should. So, and this is good moving into 2026. Thank you. I think I'm just lost my voice. Any other questions?
Any questions that can be answered with a yes, no answer? Hearing none, thank you all for the report.
Thank you.
We will move on then to agenda item number 7, the DCP projects and activities report for February 2026.
Staff wanted to provide some notable project and activity updates for February. First off, just a quick update related to the unpaid holidays for the current fiscal year. The DCP did had submitted an exemption request via the Personnel Department to the CAO Employee Relations Division to exempt staff from the furloughs that were impacting EAA employees. Unfortunately, those were not granted. So as such, staff had observed the unpaid holiday on February 9th and will be planning to also observe the unpaid holiday on March 27th. So related to the exemption request not being granted, I believe the response is related to that it was not negotiated within the agreements that special fund positions would be exempted. So I would assume that they would have told any kind of requests coming in that those would not be granted.
Esther, if you think it would be fruitful to bring that back to the board, I'd be glad to entertain it. If you think that there's any hope there for future unpaid holidays, because you have, first of all, we're not general funded. Second, you have so much work on your hands, especially with, among other things, work day that was imposed on y'all. So feel free to bring that back if you'd like to.
Sure. I think we will be anticipating the new budget to be released in the coming weeks, if I have my timing right. And so we'll get a better idea of what the plan might be for the new budget year. If there are, suggestions that could be the case, and we can bring that back to the board as well. But thank you for that. Then additionally, for elections administration, just wanted to notify the board that the notifications to eligible participants for the in order to vote and to be able to run for the board member seats for the LACERS representative and the LAFPP representative did go out earlier this month. We have also attached a copy of the election calendar that was provided to participants so that the board just has a copy for reference. The ballots will be going out prior to the election date, which is May 22nd. And we would have the election process run, and the new whoever is elected to those seats start their terms on July 1st. We did want to provide the update that the council file action to amend the board member term lengths from 3 years to 5 years was adopted by council. And so we are just awaiting for it to become effective. It was posted by the city clerk on March 11th, and it was noted that it would be effective on April 20th. So that will be, we're ready to go prior to the election date. Any questions related to the elections? Okay. Next up, we have an update related to the plan amendment for employer contribution. So currently that was adopted by the council last Wednesday on March 11th. It is currently on the mayor's desk, and once it clears the mayor's desk, it will be posted by city clerk to become effective to allow for employer contributions. We did, in terms of the payroll configuration, that was completed within the DWP payroll system and with working with Voya. So I did want to thank Voya for working with the timeline that we were trying to accomplish. So as of the paycheck for DWP employees that was paid on March 3rd, that first employer contribution was processed for the January look back. But because of the ordinance not being approved yet, the funds were held at DWP. So we will only be accepting them upon formal approval of the ordinance revision. So once city clerk posts the ordinance and that becomes effective, we'll go ahead and apply that to deferred compensation plan accounts. We do have the next cycle, which would be for the March 31st paycheck, which would be for the February look back period. So we're hoping that we are, to align both employer contributions and proceed in a regular manner after that. We have also worked with DWP to, their employee relations group released an FAQ document to all departmental employees. So that went out related to this topic. We have also added language on our website and included an informational flyer that goes out to participants, especially those that, that will go out to the participants who previously did not have a deferred comp account, but were auto-enrolled through this process. So that component, continued on because that is, we do have an existing agreement for that portion. So we have started to auto-enroll folks since that March 3rd paycheck. We'll have additional stats upcoming as this progresses, but that is the latest update related to that item. Okay. Additionally, we did want to report to the board that we did have a slight hiccup with our February 18th paycheck. We did have an issue with our payroll files. Biweekly, we do receive files from Voya to upload into our payroll system. Unfortunately, for that period, the Voya's file didn't come to us until midweek. So generally, those files will come to us over the weekend, load into the system. It gives us approximately 1 to 2-3 days to reconcile and review any errors. Fortunately, for that pay period, it was loaded on a Wednesday, so it really only gave us a couple hours for the DWP payroll, and then just overnight for the city payroll. So in terms of the full reconciliation that we normally do, we were not able to complete that. Additionally, there were some records that were included erroneously on the file. So we are in the process of correcting those errors that were consequently derived from that file, and working with Voya to make those corrections to participant accounts. Notably, it was related to loan payment amounts that were added erroneously to certain participants. Notably for our some retirees who had payments added on when they're as some are working as a 120-day retiree. So they might already be paying separately for a loan payment, but they were deducted an additional payment through biweekly payroll, which we normally would not do for those folks.
Is Voya doing anything to help make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yes, so we are going to be looking. Well, so they were able to provide the source issue or the cause of the issue. So they are going to be putting controls to make sure that doesn't happen. It's just an annual process of setting a certain schedule for their systems to, without getting into the technical details of it. But yes, they're aware of what caused the issue, and I would be confident to say that that wouldn't occur again.
Same question as Tom, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. And then just a quick reminder for board members who have not yet completed the annual filing, that is due April 1st. Just as a reminder, any late filings do incur a penalty with the ethics office. If you have any questions related to that, please feel free to reach out to Lily Voong on our staff, and she can assist you with that. Additionally, we have just some data here related to folks who reached our annual contribution limit in 2025. We've just been looking at some stats, and we just I think previously there was a board member who had asked us for this information, so just wanted to bring this up here. But basically in 2025, approximately 11% of our folks who are actively contributing did contribute up to the maximum amount. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for some quick comms updates.
Good morning, Sarah DiOlia, Senior Management Analyst on the DCP team. So as proposed in the DCP's 2026 communication strategy, there are 2 main overarching campaigns for this year, both of which are slated to launch in March. One of which is Women in Retirement. This campaign provides targeted educational resources to women and highlights unique retirement planning challenges that women face. The campaign preparations began in February in order to launch this campaign during Women's History Month, which is in March. So far, a landing page for the campaign has been created for the DCP website, and that'll be continued to be updated throughout the year. And preparations have also begun for blog posts, Money Matters webinars, email and postcard communications, and social media posts. The other anchor campaign is Your Money Made Easy. This campaign aims to aid in the education of financial basics and literacy. A landing page has also been created for this campaign and will be updated throughout the year. And then for the employer contribution, as Esther mentioned, the DCP's website has also been updated to include a section that explains employer contribution auto enrollment process, and that's in anticipation of the DWP employer contribution rollout. There's also for Money Matters, the topic for last month was DCP contribution options, and you can also see the reported engagement statistics for our website during February.
Thank you. And then just lastly for staffing updates. So for on the bottom of page 5, we do have a listing of the positions that are part of our team. Currently, we do have the vacancy for the Senior Benefits Analyst 2 position. Just wanted to report that the selection process is underway and interviews are anticipated to take place by the end of the month. So just a quick update there. And that's the end of our staff report, unless there are other questions or topics to be brought up.
Any questions for Esther or her team? Hearing none, thank you for that report. Agenda item number 8, are there any requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, our next regular meeting date is scheduled for April 21st, 2026. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.